p.m. The orders of the day are set in accordance with District Policy 2522. Objections to adoption or use of instructional, library material, or reading list materials. The first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. The flag behind us. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So next, I'll be calling names. Please say here when I call your name. Christy Miletto, Colleen McCallum.
Here.
Katie Carmax.
Here.
LaDonna Corbin. Laura Torres.
Here.
Liz Cannon.
Here.
Sarah Van Brimmer.
Here.
Thank you. The purpose of the District Objection Committee is to review objections submitted by parents, legal guardians, or residents of the county for library media materials, reading lists, and district-approved instructional materials. Once a parent, legal guardian, or resident's initial objection at the school level has been denied, the petitioner's challenge escalates to a review by the members of the District Objection Committee. In accordance with Florida Statute 286.011, each member of the committee will memorialize their recommendation using the School District of Indian River County's District Objection Committee Review Checklist. That checklist is included in your backup documentation for this meeting and has been provided to each member of this committee. Next order of business, I call for a motion to accept the minutes from the meeting dated January 31, 2024.
Move approval.
First moved by Liz Cannon, second by Katie Carmax. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. In preparation for its review, 3 copies of Ban This Book by Alan Gratz will be provided to the members of the District Objection Committee from the current circulation inventory. The petitioner's basis for the objection is that, quote, the material depicts or describes sexual conduct as defined in section 847.001, parens 19, Florida statutes. The submitted specific material objection form for Ban This Book has been included as backup documentation for this meeting and has been provided to each member of this committee. So that's also in your folder. No challenged material may be removed from the curriculum or from a collection of resource materials except by action of the board or as otherwise required in this policy and Florida law. And no challenged material may be removed solely because it presents ideas that may be unpopular or offensive to some. Any board action to remove material will be accompanied by the board's statement of its reasons for the removal. The school board's decision is final and not subject to further petition or review. If the board finds that any material meets the requirements under FS 1006.28, parens 2, parens A, 2A, or that any other material contains prohibited content under FS 1006.28, parens 2, parens A, 2B, parens I, the district shall discontinue the use of the material. Basis for the objection. The material depicts or describes sexual conduct as defined in section 847.001, parens 19, Florida statutes, which states, quote, sexual conduct means actual or simulated sexual intercourse, deviant sexual intercourse, sexual bestiality, masturbation, or sadomasochistic abuse, actual or simulated lewd exhibition of the genitals, actual physical contact with a person's clothed or unclothed genitals, pubic area, buttocks, or if such a person is a female, breast, with the intent to arouse or gratify the sexual desire of either party, or any act or conduct which constitutes sexual battery or simulates that sexual battery is being or will be committed. A mother's breastfeeding of her baby does not, under any circumstance, constitute, quote, sexual conduct. At this time, in accordance with Policy 2522, we invite the petitioner to make an opening statement addressed to the District Objection Committee to include the specific objection of the required material. If the petitioner has any additional materials for the committee, please provide them to Ms. Haddock.
Good evening. I do have a binder full of information, but I'm going to use some of it for my presentation as well. So like Mrs. Panatelis said, that I did provide a book report for the book that is being challenged. It is public facing, so this way when you guys do get the copy of the book, you could look at those specific pages and verify the cited passages. So I'm just going to go through this real quick. So when you're looking through that documentation, page 32, it says, I quote, "More importantly," said Ms. Jones, "Mrs. Spencer and her husband are rich, which means the school board listens to her even more than they listen to me, the person they hired to do the job." Children deserve to know the truth, and this isn't true. Wealth or poor doesn't determine appropriate material for minor children. So that is completely a false statement. On page 35, quote, "I'm not for censorship, I'm for common sense. We have to protect our children. It's not censorship to keep things away from children that aren't age appropriate. It's common sense. I'm sure Mrs. Jones wouldn't call it censorship to keep adult magazines with sex out of her library." This book is currently on the shelves in an elementary school and 2 middle schools. So the elementary school that has this currently, they also have a VPK program. So this book could be checked out potentially to a 4-year-old through a 12-year-old through middle school. And, you know, mentioning sex and things like that, I'm going to show you, you know, is not appropriate for minor children in school. That is the parent or guardian's responsibility to have that conversation with their child. So going on to page 53, I quote, "So it turns out It's Perfectly Normal is not a novel. It's a nonfiction book about sex, as Miss Spencer would say, with pictures." So again, I purchased this book. I did not make copies. I wanted the committee to be able to see this book in its entirety, what this book, this book is mentioning. So it's called It's Perfectly Normal, okay? And again, I am going to give the committee this to review. But throughout this entire book, there is pictures of people having sex, okay, and they're nude. They are also talking about adults being nude and children being nude, fully nude in this book. Chapter 15. Perfectly normal masturbation. These feelings are often called sexual feelings or feeling sexy. Kids, teenagers, and grown-ups, too, experience sexy feelings when they masturbate. Masturbation is touching or rubbing any of your body's sex organs for pleasure because it feels good. One everyday term people use for masturbating is playing with yourself. When people masturbate, they usually rub their sex organs with their hands or with something soft like a pillow. And pictured...
Madam, if we could just for a moment.
I have a question.
I think the instruction that we have historically done at the school board is to allow the people and the public to note, whatever the FCC regulation, that if you have children in the room, that they be instructed that there will be sexual discussion. Beyond that, Madam Chair.
It's my understanding that Ban This Book is the book in question. Is
Correct.
that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So then, why are we reading from It's Perfectly Normal?
Because this is mentioned in the book to read, and also at the end of the book, when I get done with my presentation, they are telling children to go to the ALA banned book list, this is one of the books as well. So not only is it mentioned in the book, but it's also mentioned at the end of the book to write a cover for the ALA, and this was one of the listed books on there. So potentially, children twice could be referring to this book to create a cover or read for the cover.
Is the book It's Perfectly Normal in circulation in Indian River County?
No, it is not.
Okay.
I believe this is out of scope.
So then I don't think that we need to hear any more of excerpts from It's Perfectly Normal. I believe we're here to address the petition on ban this book.
That is correct, but on page 53, Madam Chair, it says, it turns out It's Perfectly Normal is a novel, and the book is referenced several times in Ban This Book. So children and parents may not know the content of this book that their children is being told. Just like if it was children were being told to go read a Playboy or a Hustler, this is the same as that in cartoon form.
However, that book is not in circulation in our district.
Okay, so I'll include it if the committee would like to review that, because it is referenced multiple times. Again, page 64, I whispered the sex book. It's perfectly normal. I grabbed a braid of hair and held it close to my mouth, but I can't buy that one. Was it on the list, Rebecca said? I don't have to buy that one. I have a copy. My eyes went wide. She had a copy at your house? Yes, she said. She acted like it was no big thing. My mom gave it to me. I think that way I couldn't sue her for one day and bringing it to school. Have you read it? Some parts. So again, referenced in that book as well, which was the main challenge for my objection, because it references sexually explicit books in this banned book that's available to children as young as 4 years old, Madam Chair. Page 65, with Rebecca's book and Danny's book and my books, I could have had almost half the books Miss Spencer banned from the library sitting in my locker tomorrow, where anybody could read them, not just me, where I got an even bigger idea than the one I had before. So again, this is telling children to take books. So let's use School District of Indian River County, for example. If these children were to take these books that were permanently removed from our school district and have in their locker, a lot of these would be third-degree felonies. So that is what this book is telling children to do, young children to do, is to get these books that are permanently removed by the school district and put it in your locker, being like social justice warriors. So then we go to page 66. 14 books banned by Mrs. Spencer and her friends, free to borrow for any student who wanted to read them, and that's how the banned books locker began. Again, promoting pornography, for children, or sexually explicit content, books that are currently removed out of the school district, being put in children's lockers to share with other children. And there's multiple other passages. I won't pull out the other book again. And it also references books that were not removed from our school district and banned this book, such as Goodnight Moon. That's currently on our shelves. Charlotte's Web's currently still on our shelves, but they're saying that those books are banned, which is not the same for the school district of Indian River County. So when you move on, what I was talking to before, Madam Chair, on 254, design a cover for one of the books on the American Library Association of Challenged Children's Books. I also printed out a copy of that for the committee to be able to review. 4 of the books that have been removed in the school district of Indian River County are on that book, and including the book that I just showed you all. So what this is doing is telling children, again, as young as 4 years old, to design a cover for a book that has been permanently removed from a school district. Again, pornography, sexually explicit content, that adults made the decision that it wasn't appropriate for children. Okay? So now moving on to the ALA, Emily Drabinski, who is now the president of the ALA, said, I just cannot believe that a Marxist lesbian who believes that collective power is possible to build and be welded for a better world. I'm the president-elect of ALA. I'm so excited what we will do together. So the president of the ALA, again, that's referenced in this book, is saying that she is a Marxist, and she's bragging about it. This was from her personal social media page. Because of that statement and being a Marxist, saying it right out in public, The ALA has been disbanded from 9 states, including Florida, Montana, Florida, Arizona, Idaho, Illinois, Georgia, Louisiana, South Carolina, and Wyoming. So again, telling children to go to the ALA, design a cover for a book that's pornographic or sexually explicit from a Marxist from the ALA, that's why this book was challenged. We had many of our parents who said that they did not feel that this was appropriate. And again, for children as young as 4 years old to be able to have access to this material that promotes other pornographic and sexually explicit books, promotes the ALA that is run by a Marxist woman, and again, the ALA is disbanded in Florida. It's a lot of bad promotion to our children. And out of 35,000 materials that we have in the school district that's available to children, that is why this book was challenged. So if I could leave this, everything that I discussed, the book, all of the ALA stats, and all of the information of the banned books are in this binder for your review.
So the committee will now discuss and decide how to best utilize the 3 copies that we have available of the material, Ban This Book by Alan Gratz, in order to read the objected material in its entirety. As a reminder, the committee will reconvene on April 17th to discuss findings. The petitioner may be present during that time in which the committee is discussing and voting. However, the petitioner may not participate or contribute during any phase of the deliberations. Voting must comply with Florida Statute 286.11. A vote of a simple majority of those present entitled to vote will determine the resolution of the complaint. The vote and recommendation will be forwarded to the superintendent, who will then submit the committee's findings to the school board for a review and rendering of a final determination. So as I said before, in your packet, there is a district objection committee form that we would want you to use when you're reading the material. And so now we just need to discuss and decide how best to share 3 copies of this book that's being challenged. Any other questions that might come up?
Options do we have as far as procuring more copies? If we needed to purchase our own, or additional ones?
As long, from a legal standpoint, I think as long as it's the same edition, I think that there would be no problem with reviewing it. And Madam Chair, I don't know when it would be your will. I would like to discuss before we leave tonight just what the standard is that this board or this committee should be reviewing under.
Okay. So based on the petition?
Yes, ma'am.
So the way I read the petition, the material is being objected to because of the sexual conduct. I believe there were some page references. But does this fall under that purview if the book, It's Perfectly Normal, is not the book that's being specifically challenged, but it's just being referenced in that challenge material? How is that? So the basis for the objection is that the material depicts or describes sexual conduct as defined in 847.001, parens 19. But if the only part of the objection is because there's reference to this other book, what does that mean for the committee?
Especially if we don't offer that book in circulation.
And may I respond legally, ma'am?
Yes.
So through the chair, as a matter of sunshine notice, the basis for objection that you are to look to is whether there is sexual conduct as defined as the chair has read into the record and you all have in your packet. you need to read with that in mind. I have spoken with Judy Bone, who is the Deputy General Counsel at Department of Education, to seek her guidance because she, like me, had not seen anyone seek to incorporate another book. Her point of view was, if and I agree with it, frankly, I just wanted to ask her, if you as finders of fact find that the book that was read from is so integrally intertwined that it can be construed as being part of ban this book, the book that's cited at 53 and that you will have in the packet. As finders of fact, you may determine whether or not that is incorporated for purposes of determining whether there is sexual conduct. If, however, you believe that the 3 sentences on page 53 and wherever else it might be cited do not sufficiently intertwine it, then your decision would be the opposite, that it would be based entirely on the book, ban this book. And I think that Ms. Bone's counsel allows for full and fair analysis, but again, I would caution that it need be reviewed in terms of what the sunshine notice objection was, which is whether or not there is sexual conduct as described and defined in section 847.
.001, which on your agenda, number 4, has the definition of sexual conduct. So as we are reading ban this book, the basis for the objection is that it depicts or describes sexual conduct as defined, and the definition is here in your agenda under 4.02, where it says legal citation basis for the objection. So as you're reading the material, that would be what you reference, that definition, to see if ban this book contains sexual conduct as defined. Is that correct?
And I think we will have to sort through how to have the packet distributed as well, just to make sure that you can look at everything in context as finders of fact, and in 2 months, we should be able to distribute it that way.
So I don't believe that there's a budget to buy extra copies of the book. I was looking to see if it might be in our public library to see if it was available for checkout, but I don't believe it is.
It's not in the college either, I think.
Okay, so there are 3 copies here. I know that we have a connection with Osceola. I have 2 families at Osceola, so if we shared 1 copy of the book and passed it along, we could circulate it that way, and then whether we house the other copies here, you check them out and bring them back so that they're available for someone else to read when you're finished. Is that the best way to proceed? What are your thoughts?
I think 2 of us are in Sebastian. Maybe we could swap the book, one of us check it out, and then pass it to the next.
I actually would prefer to just buy a copy because I'd like to be able to go back and reference it as I do this. So I don't mind doing that
Okay.
out of my own money.
Okay,
I'm the same. I read on my iPad, so I'm more comfortable reading electronically. I can make notes in there, so I'll be fine with that.
okay,
And
yep.
And Madam Chair, 2 other procedural points. One, because we are sitting here as a board, I think it better that rather than one person turning it over to another person who's on the board, that it be placed in a central place of the board's choosing to be picked up by the next board member.
So would it be appropriate to leave it at the front desk of my school for another parent that was coming to my school to pick it up?
I think that would be fine, ma'am.
Okay. And then, since they don't need copies, you can each have a copy, and then we can take it from there.
And one other thing procedurally, and I will stop, I'm thinking logistically. We have a quorum. The member who is not here tonight may, by viewing the video, determine what happened tonight and may work with Dr. Shafty or staff to get a copy and review it before the April meeting.
And then just for the record, if you're purchasing it, the ISBN must match the ISBN in the challenge form.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay, so then, if we've covered those bases, are there any other questions from the committee? Yes.
When he said that, as we're reading the book, it's so intertwined with perfectly normal, we can vote based on that. Can you explain that a little bit better?
It's difficult to, and again, it's clear as mud, but I think that the question that DOE's general counsel raised is, you have read to you a 3-sentence chapter on page 53. If you happen to find, as a finding of fact, that whether it's because you believe that there's a sufficient incorporation by reference, if you believe, as I understood the petitioner to state, that it's a sufficient invitation that an elementary school or middle school student would go look for that particular publication, then according to DOE, then you are free to determine if you believe that is essentially incorporated by reference. And again, that's based on your analysis of the book that is in front of you. And again, you all are finders of fact. All we are doing is establishing the process. And if any of you believe that there is a sufficient direct connection, you may so find. If you don't, you don't. Does that make it any clearer?
I just want to be clear, I've never read the book, but if I do find that it's intertwined and they are encouraging that behavior of a child, I'm okay to vote that way.
That's what the DOE General Counsel says, and I think that is a reasonable interpretation.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. On this District Objection Committee, form, number 9, it says, does the material present factual information accurately? Would that specific question be for a nonfiction book as opposed to a fictional book?
That's correct. So underneath that, you'll leave it blank if
Yeah,
not.
that's why I just wanted to, realistic fiction does sometimes provide us with facts, but it's
a fiction.
if it's a fictional book, then that's not, is that my understanding? That question is intended for nonfiction as opposed to realistic fiction?
Not necessarily, because it would depend on the material. So
Okay.
an answer of yes or no is not, it's just an assessment of the material, and something that you could or not consider in your recommendation.
Okay.
I also had a question regarding the form. So it does say, as part of the form, like, is it suited to students' needs and their ability to comprehend the material? It also says, is it appropriate for grade level and age group for which the materials are used or made available? My question is, in a school library, Ms. Parentel, you are the media specialist, so you would know the best. My understanding is that the media specialist kind of has some discretion in what they are checking out to students. So if a younger student came with a Harry Potter book or something that, they clearly aren't able to read.
Yet.
Like, how does that work, or what is that procedure, or are there district guidelines that govern that? Because, I mean, not every kid is going to check out every book that's available in the media center, so how does that work?
And we do have some guidelines. This book is a reading level 4.5, so I believe it's recommended for children age 8 to 12. So as the media specialists, we talk, we meet, we have PDs together, so we agree, there's nothing defined and set in stone because we have students that are reading on a higher level than their grade level. But certainly if a pre-K student brought this book to check out, we would help them choose a more appropriate book for their age level and reading ability. So that does take into consideration when a book is presented for checkout. The media specialists that I know, that I work with in this district, that I guide their work, would make sure that the children had the ability to read the content, that it wasn't above their level. And I know that there's a process now in place to approve and get books approved before purchase. And so we do look at the audience that it's designed for and those kinds of questions that come up.
I think an additional layer of that too is we have a library access form. So in relation to not only the student's reading ability and that interaction with the media specialist, that form is also checked to determine the level of access a parent has determined a child should have to that space.
And just to be clear, a child cannot check out a book, a 4-year-old cannot check out a book that's leveled up this high without the parent's consent, correct?
If the form is marked that the child should not be checking out books above their level, then that's when an alert would come up when we're in the checkout system. So our checkout system is set up to give us alerts. This child can't check out these books. This child is restricted from these. Like, I have pop-ups that come up for specific students that have a form that's been submitted that says no books by this author, no books of this title, very specific. So for parents who choose to mark that on their forms, our system is set up to give us alerts for that information. So,
Child does
and
not
if
have-
the child comes and presents a book like this, then certainly every media specialist that I know would make sure that it's not going home with a 4-year-old.
But every child within our district either has a form granting them access, full access, or their parents are getting that choice?
Yes.
So I think your question probably has two answers. There's a judgment call that the media specialist would make if they're looking at a child of a certain age and looking at a reading level, but the alert speaks directly to what is in the text box from the parent portal to the library access. So the alerts would say full access, restricted access, and then there's an open text box. Whatever text is in that box shows for the media specialist, and then no access.
Any more questions?
I kind of had one on the maturity level, because if you look throughout statute, I kind of reviewed what we went over, the training. That word is kind of thrown around a lot in the training. And I think it's kind of a blanketed statement, because I have a 6-year-old that is very mature, and I have a 12-year-old that is extremely immature. So when you say maturity, is it a overall, like most 12-year-olds are this mature, or is it, I'm just curious, because when I'm reading a book, my 12-year-old may not be able to absorb this material the same as a 12-year-old that's been through the ropes. And as a social worker I was for 7 years, somebody's maturity level is based on experience. So my question is where does maturity come from, and how are we utilizing that word when we look at our children and say, oh, they're at grade level? I'm just curious.
Or is it their maturity of their reading ability, their reading comprehension, the topics that they're interested in? So like, if your 8-year-old is interested in the topic of book banning, this could be a resource for them, but maybe your 8-year-old not you.
No, I know what you mean. Right.
Is interested in horses, and Mrs. Parentilla would recommend books on horses instead. I mean, that's
My
one.
understanding also is with maturity level, it's usually more referencing the content as opposed to the individual. Is that,
I would say yes, that it's more about the content than the individual. And I think in this case with this book, I think we're just being asked to read this book and see if there is sexual content as defined in this book, because that's what the objection is.
It's just a general question, like, for the committee as a whole, because if we're hit with a bunch of books, and, I mean, I read in statute, it must have been in statute like 4 or 5 times, maturity. Mature, is the child mature enough, or,
And again, I think with the forms that we have, I think that the maturity level is more of a parental decision.
Okay.
I don't know that it's been maturity
and
defined as.
generally also,
uh,
I think they're referring to a generalized maturity level.
That's
of
what
a-
I'm
of a-
asking.
So what is the
As opposed to
definition of-
the individual level can be addressed through the
access
parent portal, the access
Okay.
form.
okay.
I'm,
It's not defined, a lot of the statute is not defined, but in context, you would have to look at it as an objective standard. What would the average 4th grader deal with? What would the average 8th grader deal with? Believe me, I too have your children. I have and he'll hate me for saying it, I have the 29-year-old son who some ways is 15, and I have the 25-year-old stepdaughter who was 40 when she was born. And-
Yeah, like the
but
old
that-
souls, you
But
know.
that's not the standard. The standard is roughly, what do you think is appropriate for this grade level?
Okay, that's fair. I wanted clarity while I'm reading, you know.
Sure. All right, so seeing no more questions, I would like to adjourn this meeting at 6:07. Thank you. We'll see you April 21st, 17th.